All right, I'm joined by none other than Gary Yourofsky. Gary, welcome to the stream and to the channel.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
All right, well, I have a whole list, as I mentioned to you before the stream, of questions that I want to ask you. I think that generally there are a lot of areas where we see completely eye to eye on a lot of things, and then probably some areas where we completely disagree on things. I know that, some of the views that you express with regards to like intersectionality, human rights, would be ones that I would strongly disagree with. But that being said, I don't see any reason not to talk about, advocacy or activism or liberation or whatever we want to call it.
And by the way, it's okay to disagree. Honestly, I don't mind as long as people don't cancel each other out. I have plenty of friends that disagree with me, and we're still great friends. It is impossible to agree with somebody else 100% of the time. So I don't know what people are looking for, this perfect being that has every view that I have. Not going to happen. And if it does happen, you're being lied to or you're lying about it. So I don't mind having disagreements as long as we can have a cool discussion about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach. Whether it comes to like friendships, romantic relationships, things like that. I mean, you can definitely mesh with the person and not see eye to eye on everything. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate that. So I guess I just want to get right into it. You talk about the idea of like preaching and converting people, and I guess one thing that I'm curious about is if you think that veganism is essentially like a creed. Because I know that I think in Canada at least, it is recognized as a creed. So that means that I believe schools and maybe other types of like institutional places have to accommodate for vegans since it's recognized as a belief system. I'm wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. But quite frankly, I don't care how people want to view it. Veganism is just essential because innocent beings are being tortured and killed by the billions. And if you count the marine animals, and we need to, it's in the trillions. There is no reason for people to be walking around looking at dominating innocent beings, stealing their babies, raping the female animals, killing the baby animals. By the way, this is something that really bothers me about human beings, especially ones that walk around high and mighty. They're not only animal killers, they're baby animal killers. So yes, this is a creed and we should be accommodated. In fact, I did my time for the mink liberation in Canada, and I always jokingly told people, if you're going to break the law and you're going to be facing jail time, do it in Canada. They went out of their way to serve me vegan meals in rotation, 6 or 7, when I did my 77-day jail stint. So yeah, it should be accommodated for us everywhere. And in fact, simple things too should always be vegan. Things like soup or bread when we go to a restaurant. There shouldn't be any animal products added to that stuff. But yeah, I don't care how people want to view it. You can view it from a religious basis, from an atheist basis. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, animals do not belong to humans, don't deserve to be exploited, and human beings are not more special than the animal kingdom.
Do you think that using the word like convert instead of, let's say, convince, or preach instead of teach has the effect of a non-vegan maybe thinking that we are kind of trying to like indoctrinate them in some way?
Well, of course they're going to think that, but keep in mind, I don't think it matters what words we use, how we say it, if we're radical, if we're soft. Keep in mind, I spoke with 60,000 meat-eating students over the years, 2,660 talks. My YouTube lecture went viral, converting hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. You saw how I preached. I never had a problem saying words like that, convert. I never had a problem saying words like Holocaust and slavery. That's what it is. And keep in mind, we shouldn't be planning that deeply about how we speak. We just need to speak up and speak out. And let me give you, I guess a good example is a lot of people over the years told me, Gary, you shouldn't say you're a vegan animal liberationist. Say you're plant-based, or say you're an animal advocate. People need to understand our enemies, the people that want to abuse animals, that won't listen. They don't care what we say because they're not open to the message. It does. You can be as sweet as Gandhi, as radical as early Malcolm X, and if somebody's not willing to listen to the message and accept the message, There's nothing that can be said. In fact, I've heard our enemies actually say that the Humane Society of the United States, or whatever they're calling themselves these days, that HSUS and the ALF are the same, when they couldn't be further apart. But this is how the enemies view us. They say, oh, well, they care about animals. They're all the same. So in my eyes, over the years, I just started speaking how I would want to be spoken for if I were in the animal's position. And I don't think gimmicks work, short-term effect. I think the truth works. Now, if you're not comfortable, by the way, saying things like slavery and Holocaust, I'm not forcing anybody to do it. It was comfortable to me. Do what you want to do to feel comfortable. But the most important thing at the end of the day is still going to be speaking up. And don't plan too much. People sit around, they want to have meetings and discussions about the meetings and debates about the discussions. Do you know, I never did that stuff once I got fully active. I analyzed what I did after the fact, because I knew I just wanted to go out and do something. And then afterward I said, what if I should have said that? Or maybe I should rephrase this. Maybe I should say it this way. Maybe I should, whatever. Just do it first and plan it later, because most people never get into the activist stage. They just want to plan and sit in a boardroom. I had a good friend once in El Paso. All she did was read books. She must have read 100 animal rights books. I used to stay at her place when I was lecturing at UTEP. And one day I just called her out. I thought it was friendly, but I said, hey, when are you going to stop reading books and go do something? What's the point of reading 100 books? You know how many books I read about animal rights? One. And I didn't even read it all the way through. I skimmed it because I wanted to be active. I didn't want to sit there and put all this information in and not tell anybody about it. That's the most important thing. And let's not forget that root word of activist is active. What's the point of saying you're an animal rights activist, but you're not active? You can't even use that word. So just go out and do something. Speak up, speak loudly, speak what's comfortable to you, and hopefully we'll all celebrate in the end. And wouldn't you agree that the movement needs a bunch of different voices? Hey, maybe they need a little harshness from Gary. Maybe need a little softness over here. Now, whatever it is, if everybody's doing something, we can actually achieve this goal of animal liberation. But if people aren't doing anything, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I definitely plan to ask you about kind of the softness type thing in a later question. I guess what I'd like to kind of transition into is this idea of kind of identity. So we talked about kind of like belief systems. So, you know, we do hear a lot about like religion when we're advocating or doing vegan activism. And I think that even in general, like critics of veganism will kind of like almost malign it as though it were a religion. And I think this kind of, the heart of it is that we're touching on the idea of nonviolence, which I think is kind of central to a lot of spiritual or religious beliefs. So I guess I'm wondering kind of like how you would view the idea of spirituality. You know, when people talk about being spiritual, and you know, we have this idea like in yoga, for example, of like ahimsa or non-violence to others, and then you know we have like the thou shalt not kill and things like that in the Judeo-Christian traditions, I guess. So I guess I'm just asking, I guess, how you would view this idea of like spirituality, if it's possible to actually be spiritual or nonviolent without being vegan.
I don't think it's possible without veganism, and that's my main problem with religious people. I wouldn't mind all the rituals that religious people get involved in. And I'm pretty harsh on that. You might have heard me talk about this stuff. If people are just going to walk around growing long beards, wearing a big hat, praying 18 hours a day, saying the rosaries, praying to a wall, it's just absurd stuff to me if you're not going to be a good person. The basis of ahimsa, thou shalt not kill, is you're supposed to be a kind-hearted, decent, compassionate individual. But that can't happen if you are consuming murdered animals. That can't happen if you're paying somebody else to steal the babies of somebody else. And I'm going to bring this up a lot because after 29 years of veganism, the worst thing I think that we do to animals is stealing their babies. And I've been explaining this lately. I've been explaining this lately to people. Think about this: a black woman, white woman, Asian woman, Hispanic woman, they're all pregnant. When they give birth, whose baby is it? Well, it's theirs, of course. But all of a sudden, a cow, a pig, a chicken, or a turkey has a baby, and that baby belongs to meat eaters or to the meat industry. This is obscene. This is one of the most obscene things I have ever heard about in my life. So I don't know how anyone can say they're a godly person while they're paying somebody else to steal somebody else's babies, and while they're eating baby animals. Something else people don't realize: humans aren't just animal killers. We're baby animal killers. We kill chickens when they're 6 weeks old, pigs at 6 months, cows 2.5 years. This is just obscene behavior. So if anybody wants to achieve nonviolence, it has to begin at the dinner table. It begins with veganism. And I don't even understand how people aren't putting this together. Because if people believe their God, and I don't care what God you want to believe in, but if you believe your God condones baby stealing and mutilations of animals, cutting the beaks of hens off, ripping the testicles of pigs out, if people believe that God condones chopping their heads off and chopping up their bodies into pieces, then the God people glorify is no better than the devil they condemn. People are confusing the two, and I find that to be obscene, because one is a protector, one is a lover, the other one's a killer and a liar. And the devil has been convincing people to do things in his name. I'm sorry, the devil has been convincing people to do things in God's name that God would never condone. And it really needs to end. And I got to tell you, man, when I started in 96, the first group of people that I wanted to talk to were religious people and then veterinarians. I said, I can't wait to tell these people what I just learned. They're going to be on board with me. You probably know this, but the toughest group of people to talk to are religious people. Everybody wants to kill in the name of God. And there's a phrase that people say, and I don't think people understand what the phrase means. Sometimes we say things, don't know what it means, where it comes from. We always say, oh, that's the oldest excuse in the book. Well, the book is the Bible, and the oldest excuse is God says it's okay. And what better way to sleep soundly at night than to say your God says it's okay to murder innocent beings? But again, I find it to be blasphemous and obscene. And I would expect the religious community to be the biggest proponents of veganism, but they are the toughest crowd to talk to. And those veterinarians, by the way, that I mentioned, they are nothing but dog and cat people. That's another tough crowd, the dog and cat crowd. They just care about dogs and cats.
So I do want to ask you about the dog and cat thing too. I had one other question, and by the way, I think vegetarians, by the way, are probably another group of people that are really hard to reach because they kind
Very
of
tough.
they think they're already there, and
Right.
I'm on your side just because my diet omits flesh. It's very
Right.
very difficult. So I guess I wanted to ask about well, maybe we can just get into that. So as far as dogs and cats go, I've heard this idea, like, and I've used it myself, of bringing up to non-vegans whether they would eat a dog or a cat, for example. And I think a lot of people say, like, well, like, some people do that, and if that's part of their culture, then so be it, things like that. But I think another thing that we kind of maybe need to recognize is that dogs and cats aren't even respected in the way that I think they should be. For example, like, the sterilization of those animals, that's, I think it's probably not controversial enough as it should be, like medical violence against them, um, you know, giving them operations, cutting into them without their consent, without any medical necessity for those individuals, which is, I think, a pretty radical view when it comes to what the common vegan believes. So that hasn't been a hill that I've been willing to die on and sow discord with people. But even the sterilization process itself, like with the males, it actually involves removal of the testicles, not just like a vasectomy, basically. And this is just because it's easier, it's more convenient for that to be done. But if you think about that in a human context, like, they're basically disrupting their whole, like, hormonal function. And I think people even use the excuse that he'll calm down, like, once he gets, neutered. So we're like modifying their behavior, and yeah, I think there are some issues with actually using the dog and cat example as well, because I think the human supremacy just reigns so supreme.
I wrote an essay about dogs and cats a couple decades ago. You're the only other person that I heard bring this up, because that to me is the only contradiction in our belief system, that we feel that we have the right to take away a dog or a cat's right to reproduce. Now, the only thing I'll say, and I know you understand, is considering the alternative, if we're going to murder all of their unloved and unwanted dogs and cats, it's something I'm willing to do, but it doesn't take away from the horrible contradiction that we think we have a right to sterilize. And if we wanted to do something, you brought it up, vasectomies, much kinder surgery. But again, it costs more money to do that, and they don't even really train too many veterinarians to do that operation. Good luck trying to find somebody willing to do that. But you're right, man. That is an absolute violation of everything we're standing for, which is giving the animal the right to bodily integrity. Right? Their body, their choice. They get to do what they want to do. And the removing of the testicles, that is a horrible, vile thing, because think about if they did that to human beings, we'd be up in arms and screaming. And that's something I've always wanted. I wanted the same treatment of humans and animals. We shouldn't be treating each other differently. We should all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we would never, approve of removing the testicles of males, humans. And we sit there and do it all the time to the dogs. And the calming them down, what kind of shit is that? That it kind of reminds me about shoving Ritalin down the throats of all these kids for the last 30 years because, oh, they're hyper, they're this, they're ADD. I remember they shoved that shit down my throat too. And I hated it. What was wrong with being a little hyper? What was wrong with being a little, loud and lively? These are weird notions that we have for sure.
Yeah, I think the speciesism there is apparent, and I think even in the cases of people who approach it from a rights-based perspective, they'll usually admit that this is kind of like utilitarian thinking. It's kind of like justifying some harm with the intention of preventing future harm. But if we look at it just from an individual rights-based perspective, I think we can see that it's kind of like you said, it's a contradiction.
And it's weird too that we would even let this situation get out of hand like that. I mean, why do we keep breeding all these animals? Keep making more dogs and cats. We don't have homes for the ones that need homes. Same thing with human beings, man. There are kids around in orphanages that need home, kids that need adopted, and we keep making more kids because people are selfish. Oh, I want my kid. I want a kid for my body. I don't want that kid. I want a kid for my genes, or I don't want that dog. I want this, purebred dog. Nonsense. I thought that we wanted to share our lives with a dog or a cat. But we definitely need to rethink how we view dogs and cats. And as much as we claim to love dogs and cats, we just brought up the one huge violation. And the other one is we still use dogs and cats in vivisection experiments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been lighting dogs on fire, dipping them in kerosene for burn research for decades. This is obscene. Sewing the eyes of kittens shut for blindness experiments. I mean, we don't even love the animals that we claim to love, which again, just drives me insane and just makes me not want to be close to the human race and not make me want to worship at the altar of humanity and think humans are at, the crown of creation. We're not. We're just two-legged devils.
So Gary, I did this outreach yesterday where I actually looked up the kerosene thing because I had heard you say that, and I couldn't find any actual research involving that. I'm sure that it exists somewhere, but I could substantiate the idea that at least like dogs have had like metal plates pressed on them to test burn research. So that's the example that I went with. But I only
the last I heard of it was at the Shriners Burn Institute in Cincinnati.
Okay.
They were doing it. Now, they were doing it back in the day. I'm ancient. I might be bringing up an experiment that they're not doing anymore, but the fact that we did it does not exonerate humankind from the horrible atrocity. I mean, the fact that we lit one dog on fire for no reason whatsoever, which, by the way, you can't even have an extrapolative coefficient. You can't make it relevant to human skin, dog skin, and human skin. don't even match up. The thing is absurd on so many levels, but the most absurd level is the unethical belief that we have a right to light somebody else on fire.
Yeah, and I think, you know, these kinds of like, dare I say, auxiliary uses of animals, I think are good ways to kind of springboard into conversations about rights in general. So like yesterday, I used that hot plate example and asked people on the street, like, if they think it's wrong to do that to a dog. And, you know, unequivocally, the answer was yes. And then once we establish that that's unnecessary, it's easy as just to, you know, hop the conversation over to the food department. So I think these kinds of, like, dare I say, single issues can actually help us get somebody under the broader vegan umbrella.
I don't care how we do it because it all benefits the animals. If you got to bring up vivisection, and I used to do that back in the early days of my activism in the 90s, because that's what drove me crazy and it made other people pissed off. But then it was always weird, and I'm sure you found it weird too. You can get them to condemn vivisection experiments, but all of a sudden, stealing baby cows from moms on dairy farms, they're going to make up an excuse for it. And you're trying to point out the contradiction, the inconsistency, and all of a sudden, oh, that's wrong, but this is okay, when it's all unjust. You're all viewing the animal as your property to do what you want with. And that's the real crime here, that we think animals were put on this earth for our use and our use alone. And it's really sad that most people can't even see an animal for who they are anymore. Nobody sees a cow for a cow. They look at a cow and they see a hamburger. They see a pair of shoes or a briefcase. Also obscene to me too. And I always hated too when people brought up stupid things like, oh, animals are stupid, cows are stupid, pigs are stupid, chickens are stupid. And I started questioning people over the years, and I said, I'm just curious, how many chickens do you know? And they'd always go silent and kind of turn away. I said, oh, so you don't know any chickens and you're making these judgments on chickens? Because I happen to know a few hundred chickens because I volunteer at Sasha Farm Animal Sanctuary, and I've been to others, and they're nothing like you described.
Yeah, you know, Gary,
Yeah.
oh, sorry to cut you off there. I was just gonna say, this is kind of actually touching on this idea about which I've read, which has to do with like this idea of cultural genocide. And we actually have kind of we as humans have been engaged in the idea of erasing the cultures of non-human animals, like their, I guess, primitive behaviors, and, you know, the ways that they form their own societies and cultural ecosystems, I guess. You know, when we put a number on them, when we just view them as kind of like a monolith, we don't recognize them, you know, for the individuals that they are. And this is, I think, like, you know, exemplified by the fact that we use it to talk about non-human animals oftentimes rather than, you know, he, she, like when her baby is taken. I know you use those pronouns. And, you know, I even go to the extent of trying to convince people that non-human animals are people. And, you know, this gets kind of ridiculed, but, you know, the idea that I try to convince people of is that if you have a subjective experience of the world, if you are experiencing the world through your eyes, ears, nose, throat, etc., you are a person, you know, by all.
If you're cognizant,
yeah.
Right? If you're cognizant, and animals are, yeah, you are a person. You are an individual. And yeah, that belief. And by the way, years ago, I caught myself, and I've been trying to teach other vegans, stop saying it. It is an inanimate object. And I don't care if you don't know the gender of the animal, pick one. Say he or she.
Or say they, you know, say they.
Or they.
Yeah.
I don't care. Stop saying it. And I also hate I'm big on language. Obviously, I'm an orator, public speaker, but I always hate too when people want to insult other humans by using animal terms. Right? We call cops pigs. I never heard of a pig attacking a black person just for being black and shooting them and standing on their head for 10 minutes. I never heard about that stuff. I never heard, and people say, oh, you're a jackass. But donkeys are sweet, loving. Every donkey I ever met, to me, it's a compliment. When people call me an animal name, I say, you know what? I'm very complimented. I know what you're trying to do, but it's not working because I don't see animals that way. So even vegans, though, say things like, oh, you're a weasel. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You're
Gary,
a sneaky
let me ask
person?
you, what do you think about somebody says, like, if they find a woman attractive and they say she's a fox?
Listen, there's one of the few terms that it's actually a compliment. I'm not as harsh when it's a complimentary term. It's all the negative ones that really bother me, but those are few and far in between, the
Sure.
foxes and things like that. How about when we find a woman to be unattractive, we call them a dog? Now, this is amazing to me because 99% of all dogs that I've ever met are beautiful. And only about 5% of all human beings I ever met are beautiful. How dare we try to insult another human being by calling them a dog, which are beautiful beings? We do this way too much. Or the worst is when somebody's a maniac, a killer, a serial killer, we call them an animal. Now that's pure human behavior. And that's people not wanting to deal with the harsh truth that humans are a vile species. We are two-legged devils. We claim to be moral, but we act immorally all the time. This is pure human behavior, and we want to deflect it to the animal kingdom. And this has to stop too. All that language, because it doesn't help people understand how animals are individuals.
Well, also, Gary, we don't have a word really for like what we do to non-human animals to take their dignity away, because they're just viewed as like the baseline. Like for humans, in the example that you gave of, you know, calling a human an animal, that's called dehumanization. But you know, I've only read it like in the academic literature, like this idea of de-animalization when it comes to kind of like taking away the personhood or individuality of a non-human animal, or kind of like trying to justify harm against them.
Yeah, it's this adds to the pile of atrocities and lies that we spread about the animals. And in fact, here's something interesting. So this is how bad animals got it. When George Floyd was killed in Minnesota, and those cops should be executed for what they did, Black Lives Matters started saying they killed George Floyd like a dog in the street. And I want people to really think about this. In order for that analogy to work, Black people had to find somebody, a group of beings that were treated worse than they were. And they did. They admitted all the time that the animals got it the worst, because it wouldn't work any other way. You couldn't say, oh, they killed him like a rich white banker in the street. They found an animal, because you can kill a dog in the street and suffer no consequences. I don't care what the laws say. You can get away with anything. Maybe you got a slap on the wrist, you know, a small fine. But yeah, you can murder a dog in the street. So we all acknowledge it too. And this is what's so, you know, brain melting to me. My brain has melted over these 29 years. It's hard for me to deal with our society now, because they usually admit that animals are treated horribly, and then they deny it once you confront them with the truth. Or justify it, try to justify it, make an excuse for it.
You know, I've heard you use the line of, you know, like the, you know, Auschwitz, for example, like if you take out the people who were, you know, the humans who were kind of captive there, and then replace it with non-humans, then do you still have a Holocaust? And, you know, I've seen people having, you know, taking issue with that. One thing I wanted to ask you, Gary, you know, when it comes to, I guess, just to rewind toward like the psychology of caring for others, and, you know, what we're trying to generally convince people of, I guess this is kind of like a topic shift, but I'm wondering what you think about this idea of kind of like rebelliousness that might happen when someone kind of reaches that young adult age. And if you think that sometimes people might go vegan as kind of like a rebellious act and then kind of fall out of it. I guess I've been thinking a lot about this idea of kind of like the identity that someone takes on when they call themselves vegan, call themselves an activist, and how it can be the case that we can actually have actual recidivism where somebody falls out of that. I guess I'm wondering, like, do you think that if you raise a child vegan, if they're susceptible to rebelling against that when they reach that age?
I gotta tell you, I mean, I literally know hundreds of vegans around the world who have raised their children vegan. They've told them the truth about what goes on to animals. And there isn't recidivism amongst these people because they're teaching the truth. Now, the rebellion stuff you brought up, yeah, you can have recidivism there. Plant-based, do it for your health. Of course, people fall off the wagon there. In fact, when people make those horrible jokes about vegans cheating, now those are the health people that are cheating, not the ethical vegan. I would never cheat. I do not view animals as food. There's nothing you could do to make me eat a piece of meat ever again. I don't see animals that way. But so if you're not doing it for the right reasons, it needs to be a conscious decision. You know, your conscience should tell you that this is right. This has to be done in the same way. I'm not going to rape a child. I'm not going to rape a woman. I'm not going to do anything obscene because I don't need a law to tell me not to rape a woman or a child. It's obscene to me. If it were legal, I still wouldn't do it. Same thing, this is how I view animals. There's nothing you could do to make me kill a cow, pig, chicken, or turkey and consume their flesh. So people, I want people to do it for the right reasons because then you'll stay vegan. But if you do it for the wrong reasons, you're going to fall off the wagon. And listen, I'll even be honest. I'm actually a fair guy. If you eat plant-based 6 days a week and on day 7 you want to eat a double cheese pepperoni pizza, I doubt it's going to affect your health that much. But you've committed a violent act against somebody else, and that should bother your heart and your conscience.
Yeah, this is why I think that it's damaging to the idea of veganism to promote it actually as a health thing. Like, oh, it's better for your health or it's better for the environment. You know, you and I, as you said, you know, there's ways that you can be healthy in spite of eating animals, and there's ways that you can be an environmentalist. You know, if you live out in a log cabin and live off solar energy and you know, just predate on animals in your immediate environment, you might have a smaller carbon footprint, etc. You probably won't have a smaller karmic footprint, but yeah, it's just not a solid ground for us to advocate.
Yeah, can I tell you something too? In this, I don't think everything I ever did was perfect. I regret talking about health and the environment in my speeches. And just so you know, I had a battle with myself every single semester when it started. I said, I am taking health out. I'm taking the environment stuff out. It's going to be 70 minutes of pure ethics. And I'd let the professors know. And they would always say, Gary, we do surveys, though. Health is everybody's favorite part. Then it's ethics. You pique their curiosity with health. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know what to do. Should I put this out? But after all these years, I don't have many regrets, but that is one regret. I do wish I would have just kept it on ethics because that's what this is all about. Health, enjoy the benefit if you get it, but that's not the reason. And it doesn't keep you vegan. It really doesn't.
Right.
And I have to tell you, too, former vegans, out of all the horrible things that people have done to animals, the people that I despise and don't understand the most are not vivisectionists and hunters. They're not your typical meat eater. Former vegans are the worst of the worst. How could you know what goes on and then go back to doing it? I could understand one thing, not being active anymore. Hey, I had to take 10 years off. I got burnt out. It was too much. I couldn't deal with it. I was stressed out. Okay, I can understand not being an activist. I can never understand going back to eating flesh. You could put a gun to my head and you might as well pull the trigger if you're going to make me eat a piece of meat or eat anything that came from an animal.
You know, Gary, I think that I kind of, you know, I've teetered back and forth on this idea about whether it's possible to actually be not vegan once somebody actually makes that connection. But I don't know. I don't know how much use there is in talking about that specifically. But yeah, I definitely you know, don't understand how someone can decide if they truly have seen animals as non-property, if they've recognized them as the sentient, you know, individuals who they are. To just
And the worst
decide.
thing is, too, most of them go out and try to convince others not to be vegan. It's bad enough that you changed. What would possess you to go out and convince other people not to be nice to animals? That's maddening to me.
It's
More
almost
brain
like
melt.
they've done their time and now it's like they have a special badge where they're an expert on. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is quite confusing for sure. So Gary, I want to shift to a different topic. I'm wondering if you've heard about I guess this liberation pledge idea, and if you support that idea of like not sharing meals with people who consume animals. I personally as much as I can help it, outside of like a work context, like if I'm with family, kind of thing, they know that, if there's anything from animals on the table, that I'm not going to be sitting there. I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are.
It's possible. I started it because I started this in 1997, and
Oh,
I
wow.
want people. I want people to know in '96, the first year I went vegan, and up until that moment at a holiday dinner, I actually was allowing people to eat what they wanted. I didn't want to be this so-called radical vegan and forcing people to do things, although we need to be radical and need to force people to be compassionate. I don't think there's anything wrong with forcing compassion. But I was at a holiday dinner and they my uncle kept putting the roast beef tray in my face. I politely asked him 3 times, please stop doing that. It's not funny to me. Don't you normally see me laughing and joking around here? I'm usually pleasant, not funny to me. And the third time he did it, I said, well, you know what, Uncle Lenny? How about I knock your ass out? That would be funny. You want to see something funny? How about I knock your ass out? And then everybody gets mad at me. I'm like, wait a second. I'm sitting here eating my own veggie burger that I brought. I didn't say anything to anybody, and you guys are mocking me. So I decided at that time, if you want to eat with me, you eat vegan or we don't eat together. And by the way, there's no requirement that we have to eat together. I have plenty of non-vegan acquaintances. I'm sure you do too. Doesn't mean we have, so you go eat your stuff, I'm going to eat my stuff, and I'll meet you afterward if we're going to hang out later on. And this is what led to the downfall with me and most of my family. This also happened again, which was bizarre, around 2012-ish. I was passing through Chicago for one day, and my niece and my nephew and my mom, they wanted to take me out for some dinner. And for 15 years now, that rule had been in effect with them. And I assume we were all going to eat vegan. Meanwhile, somebody orders fish, somebody gets a veggie burger with cheese on it, somebody gets mac and cheese, and it just, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe you would do that in front of me. You know what I've been through. You know I've been to jail. You know I have given my life to this cause, and for one meal, I was passing through town for one meal. This is how ridiculous meat eaters are. They can't even have one meal sometimes without an exploited being on the plate. And I explained to them too before I stormed out, you had 364 days this year. You could have eaten whatever you wanted to eat. Gary's in town for one day, and it was my birthday on top of it. And you decided to order dead animals at the table. Meat eaters are the ones that are unreasonable.
Well, you see
Meat
this
eaters
thing.
are the, yeah.
I was gonna say, so you see this thing on like Reddit sometimes where there's like a vegan wedding, or like a couple who wants to have a vegan wedding, and then they're like, you know, a lot of times the commenters are saying that they're unreasonable, they shouldn't push their
So
views on
ridiculous.
others. It's like, and then the people, there have been, this topic has been raised about the non-vegans like meeting up before the wedding and like eating because they don't want to just eat like leaves and stuff like that. And then of course, I'm sure they get to the wedding and they see all this amazing food, curries and different things like that.
And these people are living in fantasy land thinking that vegan food isn't delicious. And listen, there could be bad vegan food just like there's bad meat. Don't act like we didn't eat meat for most of our lives. There were nasty pizza joints I went to over the years, nasty hamburger places, bad hot dog joints. All of a sudden, the meat eaters got this bar set so high that every piece of vegan food has to make their knees buckle and they have to pass out from delight. My God, sometimes you have a bad veggie burger. Don't take it out on veggie burgers. Maybe you need to go to a new place that has a really good veggie burger. If food is made to taste good, and vegan food obviously is delicious at most of the time, what is the problem with it? These people are just stubborn again. They're selfish and stubborn and closed-minded, and they want to throw it on us. Talk about gaslighting. They make us seem like we're unreasonable and demanding, when every single meal of their lives has to involve a dead animal or something that came from a dead animal.
But Gary, tell me this, like when you smell like flesh cooking, I'm not talking about like the seasonings cooking and stuff like that, but wouldn't you agree that there's always this either like heavy or even undercurrent kind of just smell of like death? Like I can smell like if somebody's eating, like I don't know if I used to just be unaware of this, but I swear, like it's not a matter of taste for me in any capacity. Like if I'm eating somewhere, like sometimes I'll eat at Chipotle, and they're just mixing stuff sometimes at like rush hour, and it's possible that a piece of animal gets into like my sofritas tofu thing, and if I actually like start to chew on that, I immediately, like, my mouth just shrivels up, and I'm like, this is disgusting. It's like an immediate gag reflex.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I smell death all the time. I'm driving down the same roads you are. I pass the KFC, the smell of fucking murdered chickens. It's outrageous that people become immune to it. And that's what's so bizarre. And that's what happens. We become immune to the smell of death and fear and torture. And as you kind of pointed out, it's the only reason people like meat, they don't actually like meat. Here's another regret I have in my Georgia Tech speech. I said, name me 2 words why people eat meat. Why? Like, tastes good. I wish I could go back and change it, because it doesn't taste good. If I killed the chicken in front of any heavy meat eater and said, go ahead, eat it, they'd say, you must be crazy. You better fry it, bake it, put some oil on it, right? Put it between 2 slices of bread, lettuce, tomato, onions, pickles, mustard, ketchup, whatever. They're doing everything to mask the disgusting taste of flesh. So people don't like the way meat tastes. They like the way it's prepared. And that's why vegan mock meats can taste so good. They just prepare it the same way. Although I'm way past that stage. I don't know if you want to talk about it. I gave up all the vegan junk food a little more than 10 years ago. In fact, I've been frugivore
I
for
see
the
your
first time.
bananas
Yeah,
over there.
I've been frugivore for this entire week. I'm doing the 30 bananas a day and 4 cucumbers. And I got to tell you, I feel fantastic. But I was already eating really clean for the last 10 years. I did a podcast last week with Dr. Douglas Graham, my favorite doctor, the OG. He's been vegan for almost 50 years. And he even made fun of my clean diet, which was based on less than 10 grams of fat. He wanted me to get the cooked food out. So I said, all right, I've always wanted to be frugivore. And I got to tell you, I feel fantastic. And it's so simple. That's
Gary,
another
I
topic.
did a raw diet a few years ago for maybe like 3 months. And in the past, I was on the banana train as well, more when I was doing like marathon running, training, that kind of stuff. I never quite got to 30 bananas a day. I maybe was at like 12 to 15 a day,
Okay.
would just kind of crush them into my Vitamix. I had trouble actually just
Me too.
eating that much, but if I blended them up, I was able to consume a lot more.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm doing too, by the way. I'm doing
yeah,
2 smoothies with 15 bananas each.
wow. But yeah, nowadays I avoid like oils as much as possible.
Deadly.
Very
Oils are deadly.
rarely.
So
Yeah.
hey, quickly, I'm big on, I think I figured it out. This is Gary's personal epidemiological study, although Dr. Doug Graham will back me up on this. I think John McDougall backed me up. But I started seeing some old time vegans getting sick recently. And I was wondering, hey, what's going on? I thought we were supposed to be immune to this stuff. And I started looking for the common denominator, the link between meat eaters and vegans still. Now, of course, I went to sugar, and sugar's horrible. You need to get rid of it. But that wasn't it, because I know meat eaters that don't eat sugar, and I know vegans that don't eat sugar. So I'm running down the list. Salt. Well, no, I know people don't eat salt. Fat. Every vegan and every meat, dairy, and egg eater consumes excessive amounts of fat. This is my belief, the cause of all of our diseases, the main cause. Thing about this, I actually went to the grocery store after I figured this out. I looked up Crisco oil, nasty Crisco, all the way to high-end avocado. They're all the same, 14 grams of fat per tablespoon. Now name me one person on this planet that uses 1 tablespoon of oil.
Yeah.
Bullshit. They start off turning the bottle over. There's 80 to 100 grams of fat. You had the meat fat, you had the Beyond Meat burger fats, all the vegan junk food stuff. People are consuming 200, 300, 400 grams of fat per day. I'm telling you, this is the root.
Yeah,
So
I think you also have to look at the composition of the fat, though. Like, there's, I'm not a fan of adding oils to anything. I'm a fan of them in their natural state, like in an avocado, in a walnut, that kind of thing. But, the fat, like in palm oil, for example, or coconut oil, is much more saturated than the fat in something like canola or olive or sunflower oil. But yeah, I'm not a fan of adding oil to anything. I haven't eaten gluten in a few years either. But yeah, I eat like mostly raw, mostly fruit. I think I kind of go with the seasons a little bit too. Like in the winter, I kind of crave something a little more like warm and savory, I guess. That's kind of where I struggled with the raw thing. Is at night I would always crave like something kind of like, you know, like a red peppery, basil-y, pesto-y kind of something like that.
I wouldn't recommend more than 20 grams of fat per day. I'm usually not even close. Now the only fat I'm getting is the hemp protein powder for the banana smoothie. So I'm doing about 6 or 7 grams of fat. I don't think we need excessive amounts for sure. And the whole foods we should be eating too, right? I find it hysterical that one of our mantras, every vegan tells a non-vegan, you should eat fruits and vegetables. And then vegans never eat fruits and vegetables, for crying out loud. Eat your fruits and vegetables that you're telling other people to eat. But before I did this frugivore thing, my breakfast was 1 cup of barley and a half a cup of green lentils, or a cup of barley and a can of beans, all low fat. Lunch was 10 to 15 pieces of fruit, usually in a smoothie, and dinner was 5 or 6 different vegetables. And I really dig that new product by Big Mountain. It's the fava bean tofu, soy-free, fat-free, 0 grams of fat, 64 grams of protein. That I really felt great on that, but I even feel greater just doing the banana stuff.
Yeah, it is quite there is quite like a food culture, I guess. In some, I guess, vegan or plant-based, and I say plant-based not because I'm trying to make it marketable, but because I doubt the veracity of the veganism of some of these people. But there's like a more of a junk food culture. But yeah, I think.
And by the way, that's fine. For the record, I'm not the health police. I don't care what you eat as long as it's vegan. You want to eat Ruffles potato chips all day long and Mike and Ike's, go for it. At least no animal has to suffer and die. I just want to help people who are in this for the long haul, and we all should be. I'm telling you, eventually you're not going to feel good eating Beyond Meat all the time and Ruffles potato chips. You need to eat some healthy, wholesome food. And I want us to also look the part. I got to be honest, and I know you know this, we live in a superficial world. You know, we have to look the part, look the healthy vegan. And that's one thing I always got complimented on. I'm always working out too every single morning. When I walk in the class, I'm like, oh man, I never saw a vegan look so good. And like, bullshit. Yes, you have. Stop saying that all your preconceived notions. But I had to, maintain this level of healthiness so people would listen more. I was willing to do it. I do like working out, but in my head, as they said this, I'm like, yeah, I really like getting up at 4 a.m. to be at the gym at 5 this morning, just so you would listen to me more. But I would do it, and I always did it for the animals.
Yeah, I think about the idea of like the food culture and things like that. I think part of the thing with food is that it kind of reminds us of our traditions, and I think that that's really comforting for people. I think like there's something to be said for the idea of identity and like social belonging, and I think that's maybe largely responsible for the people like explaining how maybe some people can go ex-vegan. It's like, even if they were involved in like the so-called vegan community and things like that, I feel like you either kind of need to be like obsessed about it and really driven by this kind of like fire, or alternately you just have to kind of like make a logical connection where it just seems nonsensical for you to not be vegan. But it's just interesting. I've analyzed this idea up and down of like people going not vegan, like becoming not vegan anymore, and I don't get it really.
I don't know why people want to fit in so much. I've spent the last 29 years trying to fit out. The crowd will get you killed. I don't know why people want to follow the crowd. The crowd, for the most part, not even for the most, the crowd has never been on the right side of a social justice issue. It's always been a small group of people trying to convince everybody else not to do something horrible to somebody else. I don't know why people succumb to peer pressure so easily, but they do. We're just weak-minded. We really are. And again, we claim to know right from wrong, claim to be moral agents. And then all of a sudden we're faced with the world's biggest moral choice and people ignore it. Well, I'd rather hang out with my friends and my family. Well, you know what? I'd rather not hang out with my friends and my family if they're going to be vicious and vile. I don't want to sit around these people. It's hard for me to look at people that aren't vegan too. And these are, listen, I have plenty of non-vegan acquaintances at the gym I hang out with. I like talking to them. But as soon as as soon as I'm leaving the gym, I'm thinking, man, what is wrong with these people? And I try to talk to them and preach to them, and I reach some of them, others I don't. It's just really bizarre how people can be so closed-minded and so cruel and so callous. I don't know. I don't know why we just
Yeah,
love
I
acting
think
out.
I think there's, we know that there's this idea that's just perpetrated upon people of like the normal, natural, and necessary thing, and then by extension, veganism being portrayed as abnormal, unnatural, unnecessary. I'm wondering, when it comes to having this wave of change actually realized in the world, if you think that we stand to benefit from non-vegans doing any kind of like pro-animal advocacy. I know, like, for example, with the environmental movement, it used to be, turn off your lights when you're not using them and take shorter showers. And now it's more like people kind of doing pressure campaigns on the so-called like decision makers, kind of like the legislators and companies, things like that. I'm wondering if you think, if non-vegans have any role in animal rights, like not necessarily vegan activism, but like anything that would help animals, and maybe if you could even speak to welfareism. Um,
They're, yeah, they're not benefiting the animals when they tell us to buy a washer dryer that is more efficient. These are so low on the list. They're less than 1% effective in doing anything. As you know, the biggest benefit to the environment would be destroying animal agriculture. And the environmental crowd, another large group of hypocrites claiming to care about the earth, but ignoring the world's worst agricultural crisis, the world's worst crisis, which is animal-based agriculture. And welfare welfare is a horrible thing too. It just makes liberation harder. 2002, gestation crates were being banned in Florida. I lectured in Florida my whole entire lecture career, in Orlando and Miami, and I was the only activist in America saying, don't do this, this is going to make it harder. And for the next 2 years, and they were successful, they got gestation crates banned, but you know what, they were still killing pigs in Miami, still killing pigs in Orlando. And then when I went to the classes and explained injustice, they said, hey, I thought we could eat pigs now, you guys got rid of gestation crates. Now I got to explain more why. No, it's not okay to go to a free-range farm or a cage-free farm. It's not okay to buy local. That you're still missing the point of animal exploitation. And to be honest, if I were an evil person, and that's all a vegan, the animal rights movement wanted me to do was not buy pigs from a factory farm or not buy pigs from that were raised in a gestation crate, I'd say, wait, that's it? I can still eat pigs though? Okay, deal. And then when you came back next year to say, hey, can you stop eating pigs from the free-range farm? I'd say, screw you. I just did what you wanted. Leave me alone. So this is why I always demanded animal liberation. The welfare crowd makes everything harder. It just diverts people to a different form of cruelty. And I'm not looking to change people's forms of cruelty. I want to eliminate the cruelty.
so Gary, if I could ask you, yeah, I totally understand the idea of not wanting to have to like move the goalposts and just tell them what the goal is initially. I'm wondering what you think about some forms of activism which involve, let's say, trying to get different slaughterhouses or kind of animal rearing operations penalized, like to try to get municipalities to enforce laws that these places might be breaking. Like I've heard of other activists kind of doing things where they're trying to like hit the companies in their wallet, kind of, or to get laws that are already on the books enforced.
The problem is if people don't understand why laws are passed, no one's going to enforce them and no one's going to follow them. If for some reason Trump tomorrow banned the consumption of meat, do you think anybody would stop eating meat? And who would enforce it? I find it to be backwards. Now, I'm not saying I don't want laws to be passed, but the laws need to be passed at the end of a movement. Because people used to say, oh, Gary, what about the 1964 Civil Rights Act? You mean after hundreds of years of protest, violent and nonviolent? I mean, after all the legwork was put in, and then we realized, hey, we have to put this in writing that Black people have a right to vote. You do it at the end. And the animal rights movement is always looking for a gimmick, shortcut. And that's all welfare is, a gimmick and a shortcut. And by the way, what kind of laws are they really violating? Because the Animal Welfare Act of 1966, which I used to show during my lectures, during the Q&A session, it says that animals in the meat, dairy, and egg industry are not animals. So what was all the time and money they wasted in 1966 trying to get this law passed? For what? What's the point? What's the purpose? And then people thought, well, hey, there's an Animal Welfare Act. Animals are being cared for, Gary. The Animal Welfare Act says so. It just allows perpetrators to legally violate animals.
Yeah, and I think there's also, you know, what you say about the culture kind of needing to change first, I think is critical here, because people will carve out exceptions in the laws all the time. Like, to my knowledge, the laws forbidding like bestiality, for example, or even child abuse, will carve out exceptions for animal husbandry, or whatever it's called, animal agriculture, or food purposes. Or like with child abuse, for example, there are exceptions for genital mutilation, which I think that's also like kind of ridiculous to remove a body part from a baby who has perfectly healthy tissue with no need to remove that tissue.
Are you talking about circumcision?
And that's what people call it. Yeah. But, you know,
I think it's horrible too, by the way. No, that's definitely a complete violation. It's a sexual mutilation. Absolutely.
But it's ridiculous also, like in the US, how I've heard vegans use this idea of, you know, like, talking about like legality, morality, that kind of thing, and refer to FGM, like female genital mutilation, happening in other countries, and say, like, you know, if this is happening in their cultures, does that make it okay? But like, I don't get, I guess why men, boys are expected to just take it, you know, just be like, this is a rite of passage. You know, it's absolutely a violation.
It's back to this horrible argument of tradition. Tradition is one of the worst violators of justice on this planet, definitely against animals and against humans. Tradition should never be a justification, because why the hell do people think we used to know how to be ethical? A tradition would only work if it was ethical back then. And if you're doing ethical things and then people say, well, that's their tradition, that's our tradition. You mean clitorectomies are a tradition? It's always been a violation. It's always been horrid and vile and evil and wicked to do that to somebody. And I don't, it's making my brain melt, man. I just can't deal with the absurd reasons that people want to come up with to be mean and vicious and cruel to somebody else and to dominate them. And tradition, habit, convenience, all these are just more excuses. And I don't know why people can't make up an excuse to be kind.
To be kind, yeah. Yeah, I heard you say, I believe on James's live stream yesterday, about how people don't use religion to justify being kind. It's always kind of
to be mean.
Yeah, on the topic of, I guess, men in general, I guess I'm wondering, there's this whole idea of like eating animals and masculinity, and from the research I've seen, actually, vegan women are not immune to this kind of conditioning as well. You see I think you see more vegan women, for example, being willing to be in a relationship with a non-vegan man than, and I don't mean to be heteronormative here, but just, just to talk about the polarities here. You see that, I think, more than you see vegan men being willing to be in a relationship with a non-vegan woman.
I want to help women out because I've received thousands of emails in the last 29 years. Gary, how can I make my husband? How do I make my boyfriend vegan? Please help me. I showed him your speech and it still didn't work. Now, if you could watch my speech or you can watch Earthlings and not become vegan, first of all, you're just a dickhead. I broke it down completely. And if you can get through Earthlings and still eat meat, you're just pure evil. But I like to help women out. Shut your legs. You control us. Shut your legs. It would take him a week or two. He's going to bring a package of tofu home and say, hey, honey, I don't know how to make this, but can we eat some vegan food? Use your power. And it's okay to coerce somebody to make them compassionate. And when this, and this talk about masculinity, a real man protects somebody who's weaker than they are. They don't take advantage. That's a punk. A punk would take advantage of somebody that they can't. Listen, we have the same power. How come we want to protect all those chickens? I want to protect those worms. After the rain, I go outside and move them off the sidewalk. I want to protect all the animals. I want to take the spiders out of my house. Hey, man, I'm not going to smush you. It's okay. I'm just going to take you outside of this tree in the back. I always want to use my power for good. I don't know why people, especially men, want to be vicious with their power. Rule with a loving touch instead of an iron fist, and that makes you a real man. But there's some major propaganda, brainwashing, programming of men and of human beings in general about what it means to be a man or what it means to be a human. And it always involves dominating and exploiting somebody else, which is heartbreaking.
You know, Gary, I think also that dynamic, like that we observe, you know, this idea that's been instilled in men and in society at large is kind of responsible for the fact that it is so hard. Let's say, you know, you were considering entering into a romantic relationship with a woman and she was open to going vegan, and you're like, okay, maybe I have something I can work with here. It's hard not to come off as though you're trying to be this overbearing, hyper dominant kind of man if you're talking about nonviolence toward other animals, which is really kind of confusing. Like it's like you're the one talking about nonviolence, but somehow it's like trying to coerce somebody almost into adopting your way of how you want them to be, kind of thing.
But if you're going to coerce them to be kind, I'm going to support that coercion 100% of the time. It's just okay. Now, you bring up something interesting. That would be the one exception to the rule. And everybody, you got vegan radar. Use it. I got it. You got it. When I walked in every classroom I lectured, I said, oh, good, 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 bad, good, on the fence, good, bad. You can tell when I'm at the gym these days. I'm like, you know what? He would be open. She would be open. And he's not going to be open. You know, so hit those people, use that radar and talk to the people that you think are going to be open-minded. But you're going to find a lot of people, you're going to sense, you know what, she would know and she would be open to veganism. So I would be interested in dating her because it would be a great conversion. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's the dating of the people that never want to budge, and you know that, and then you stay with them. I just don't know how you can live in the same household with somebody that's going to be eating flesh 3 times a day. How are there not 3 major fights happening every single day? And why would you want to put up with that?
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me, but I know a lot of vegan women over the years that have kept their meat-eating husbands and boyfriends, and I don't get it. I never tolerate it. The only exception, again, is if they didn't know and you knew that they would be open to it, and then you can help them along the way.
Yeah, like you said in your speech, and you know, as I think you've said in lots of them, you know, once you know, after you know what's happening, then what's your excuse, you know, after that point?
I used to love ending my speeches with, what's your excuse now? And again, why don't you make up an excuse to do something nice for somebody else, for the animals, instead of making up an excuse not to care, not to do nothing, to keep the status quo, to keep on harming somebody else? I'll never understand, because we weren't born this way. You know, the 99% of vegans were not born vegan with vegan parents. We had to look in the mirror ourselves at one point and say, man, I messed up. Oh, I made a mistake. But all you can do is make amends. You know, move on. It's okay to admit you're wrong. Something else our society doesn't want to do. Nobody wants to admit they're wrong ever. Everybody's a genius. Everybody knows everything. It's amazing to me. Everyone's a fucking genius. Everybody's Stephen Hawking all of a sudden. And humans literally don't know shit. Don't know shit about morality and ethics. Technologically, we are brilliant. Ethically, we're on par with parasites.
I want to take a moment at this time to just encourage anybody watching to please consider making a donation to Sasha Farm. And I was also wondering, Gary, if you'd be open to just saying a few words about Sasha Farm.
Please help Sasha Farm. I've been going there for 30 years, and for anybody who's not a fan of mine, I don't receive compensation. Do it for the animals. I'm just a spokesperson. I'm trying to help them. It's a place that I've gone to decompress. It's a place that I've gone to see animals in their natural state. And it makes me think, oh my God, why can't it be? We could do this. Look, there's cows just being cows, eating grass in a field, sitting underneath a tree because it's too hot, the sun is shining too much, or hanging out in the barn because it's too cold and windy. Whatever it is, these animals can live their natural lives, be themselves. They're given names. They're not branded and tagged anymore. And it's going to rely, we have to rely on vegans to save the sanctuaries. This falls on us. If we're going to go out and demand that people be nice to animals, there are going to be plenty of animals that need a place to stay. And sanctuaries are hurting these days. Now, the reason Sasha's in jeopardy, real quickly, the former owner is demanding that we pay him for this 50 acres of land that Sasha is on. He wants the money, and it's a ton of money, $675,000. It is a fair market price. We checked with real estate agents. Otherwise, we'd be fine. Sasha always got by. They always raise about $250,000 a year. That's what Sasha needs to feed all the animals and to pay the few employees that are there. Shara Jones gets a $50,000 a year salary. There's a couple of part-time workers, $21 an hour. Other than that, it's all volunteer based. So please send money to Sasha Farm. And this is weird for me because I've never been a fundraiser. I've been an activist, 2 separate jobs. So it always made me feel uncomfortable to ask for money, but I'm doing this for the animals. So please send in something. I don't care if it's $5. Try to make it a monthly donation. If you can send more, we can use it. And if you want to send money to your local sanctuary, I'm a fair guy. Send it somewhere to a sanctuary nearby. Volunteer at your local sanctuary. Give them a couple hours a week. It's really essential that we support and save our sanctuaries because right now they're hurting all over the world. People are just have this weird belief that, oh, it's not money well spent. Go look at a cow, one of the few cows that have escaped our hellholes, and you look at him or her in his eye and you tell him, I'm sorry, I think it's a waste of money to pay for hay for you to live for 20 years. I mean, it's the least we can do, right? We've murdered and tormented billions over the eons, and there's a few thousand that are lucky enough to be at these places. Everybody, please help the cows out, help the pigs and the chickens, the turkeys and the goats and the sheep. They need a nice place to stay, and this falls on vegans right now. Honestly, I think meat eaters should be funding sanctuaries, but that's a whole different story, and I don't know how to convince them that for all the evil things you do, the least you could do is send money to the sanctuaries. But right now, it's going to fall on the vegan community to save these sanctuaries.
I think a lot of the non-vegans who make donations to make up for kind of what they do to animals end up also kind of misguided in who they donate money to. It's usually like welfarist type organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
Back
Or
to the dog and
speciesist
cat
ones,
stuff.
right?
But yeah, they should be helping the cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys that they're murdering every single day.
And Gary, so back to the topic of kind of what's happening to these animals every day. I know, there are organizations who activate for animals on the street by displaying footage of what's happening to animals. Cube of Truth type things, for example, I've participated in a lot. I have heard criticism about it, excuse me, from people on the street saying like, you're going to expose kids to this. There are kids around, things like that. I'm wondering kind of what you think about that. I understand like how it can be really important to like educate kids like verbally about what's happening, but I guess I'm wondering if you think that is a fair point, like the criticism about like actually showing like the graphic nature of that. Even of course it's educational, so I don't think there are like legal issues with it, but one concern that I have is maybe the possibility of kids becoming desensitized to this. Like there's this idea of like kids who grow up on farms sometimes saying like, oh, I killed my first chicken when I was 6 or something like that, and they get kind of used to chopping animals' heads off, and or like, oh, these city slickers just need to go out into the country and actually see, how this farming relationship with animals works, and they'll kind of consider the city people detached and almost like laugh at adults who are shocked by the footage that they see. I guess I'm wondering if you think that the exposure of kids to this kind of graphic material can have the effect of maybe desensitizing them toward the violence against those animals and seeing it as like just part of the world that's to be accepted.
I think the point is 100% false. I think these kids need to see the truth. In fact, the more I think about it, and I was told this over the years, I did speak in some second, third, fourth, fifth grade classes, oh, the kids can't handle the truth. The more I realized, no, the kids can handle the truth. The adults can't handle the truth. The parents can't handle the truth because they've been lied to and they keep lying to their kids and they don't want to hear the truth. The kids were always wonderful whenever I told them about what was going on. They were still attached to animals and they were horrified at the things that were going on, and they were upset that they were lied to and told that hamburgers grow in hamburger patches. So I think that footage needs to be out there for the kids. And think about all the lies we tell kids in general. Not just that hamburgers grow in hamburger patches, and show them cartoon caricatures of chickens and cow and pigs and turkeys. Everything's a lie to them. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. We wonder why we're such messed up human beings when we grow up, because everything we've ever been told is a friggin' lie. And then it makes the job tougher later on to try to explain the truth, because they're like, wait a second, mommy and daddy never told me this. There's no way this vegan's telling me the truth. And for those kids that grow up on farms killing animals, they were brainwashed and programmed into killing those animals. They didn't want to do that on their own. Mommy and daddy went outside, put a knife in their hand, put a machete in their hand, and said, you go and do this right now. And this is the way it is. And this is how we live. And they indoctrinated them and made them become desensitized to the murder of animals. And when it comes to people killing directly, you've often heard this too. Hunters want to say this. Hey, Gary, I actually don't support the meat industry because of what goes on inside of a slaughterhouse. That's why I kill directly. Isn't that okay? You know what? The more I think about it, no. In fact, you're more psychotic than everyone else, because I ate meat for 26 years. And if you put a gun in my hand or a knife in my hand and say, go shoot that cow or cut that cow's head off, I'd say, you must be crazy. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that to somebody else. The fact that you can kill and harm directly, you got some serious psychological issues. But it doesn't, and it shouldn't surprise people to hear me say this. Again, everything everybody does is backwards. It's always backwards. Everything everybody believes, it's always backwards. So the kids need to see the truth. I'm a full proponent of showing kids this stuff. In fact, at the Cube of Truth out here in Cologne, I can't tell you how many kids stop there and watch. Concerned, they want to know. We go up and talk to them, and then mommy and daddy pull them away. No, don't listen to them. No, we're supposed to eat meat. Humans cannot help themselves but continue to lie. That is our best trait. We just lie, and lie some more, and we keep on lying, and no one can handle the truth.
I think you highlight this area of unawareness that we have when it comes to like what's happening, and I've seen adults, like elderly people, actually shocked and horrified by what they see. And I think if people just knew, if this wasn't so hidden, I think we would see a huge wave of people moving in the direction of respecting
I agree so much with that. I swear, this is why I insisted I would not do a lecture unless they allowed me to show that 5-minute slaughterhouse video, because nobody wants to see what goes on. And nobody would believe me. They would always say, Gary, but I've heard you speak. You're really graphic. Can't you just describe it? And I'd say, no matter how graphic I could be, the human brain won't let you imagine living beings being chopped up into pieces while they're fully conscious. No matter what I say, you can't imagine somebody shoving a steel rod inside of a cow's vagina or their bare hand to inject them with sperm. You can't imagine searing the beaks of hens off, or putting male chicks into a grinding machine because they're useless to the egg industry. The human mind, you can't imagine Auschwitz unless you saw it. Your brain protects you from these horrible things. You can't really imagine what a slave ship was like. You can't picture it in detail. You have to see these things to understand the atrocity that's going on. So, and listen, as you can imagine, that was the part of the speech where most people calmed down, became subdued, and listened to me more, because my speeches all started out with, arms crossed. The fucking vegans here. We got to listen to this shit again. And by the 15-minute mark, when the slaughterhouse video was just about to end, arms were open. They were like on their desk. Maybe arm was above the head. Whatever it was okay. I'm listening. Tell me more. Nothing beats the truth. You can't sugarcoat this issue. You can't lie to people. You can't play politician and try to convince people to do something kind and just. You simply have to show them what's going on, and everybody needs to see a slaughterhouse. Imagine if McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's and KFC on TV would show, hey, this is where our chickens come from, and show a chicken slaughterhouse. This is where cows come from, and show cows having their heads chopped off. How many people do you really think would still go out and eat flesh and make justifications for this? But they intentionally show us cartoon caricatures of animals in those commercials. They intentionally don't show us a slaughterhouse. They intentionally don't show us a slaughterhouse truck full of animals who are terrified. It's brainwashing, and it's amazing that people still accuse vegans of trying to brainwash people. We are the ones trying to unbrainwash and deprogram everybody and awaken people from their soporific states. And
The really interesting. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off there. I mean, I think the really interesting thing is that vegans or non-vegans a lot of times will actually defend this. As some, somebody who wasn't raised vegan. I believe I was born vegan, but I didn't know it. But I, wasn't raised vegan, and
Right.
when I saw this information, it wasn't anywhere within my mental landscape, if you will, to try to find a reason why I should continue doing this. It was like, oh shit, this is really messed up. Like this footage, I had stopped eating animals for 2 years, and I think that was mostly health related at that time. But then again, as a kid, I would even ask my parents, like, is this real meat or factory meat? And I had some kind of, but when I said factory meat, I meant like not from a freaking animal. I don't know how I had that concept as a kid. Of course, you go through life, you develop this inertia, and you keep going with the crowd. But it was after 2 years of not eating animals that I came across footage of what happens in the egg industry, because I was at a Subway restaurant. I was getting like an egg and cheese morning, whatever breakfast thing. And the person working there asked me if I was vegetarian. And I told him I was. And he said, oh, well, in my culture, egg isn't vegetarian, because he was East Indian. And I looked into this at home. It just planted a little seed in my brain. And when I saw the chicks being ground up, I was just like, this is not a kind industry, to put it simply. And then I saw something about dairy, clicked on that. I saw the mother cows lined up, and I was just like, okay, this is like some video that I shouldn't be seeing. Like it had this kind of like, like who the hell does this? Like where they got a camera in this messed up ass place? Like they're filming this. Like I don't want to contribute to this. It seemed like something starkly outside the realm of like moral decency for me to, continue paying for that.
So I want to ask you, so what made you finally go vegan, and how old were you?
It's been almost 13 years. I'm 38 now. So I guess I was like 25. And it was kind of a combination of things. So I had actually been hospitalized with pancreatitis, and it was like pretty severe. And I had just gotten a biopsy done of my pancreas, and I was waiting to see if I had PanCan, basically, which is like, 94% of people or something die within 5 years of that diagnosis. So I was there laying in the hospital, trying to fall asleep, knowing that in the morning I was going to find out if I had that cancer or not. And I was listening to this yoga meditation, something, and the guy who was giving that yoga presentation, I guess, he was talking about how if you eat non-veg, you're a murderer. And I was on board with that for the most part, since I hadn't eaten animals for 2 years. It wasn't something that I was like mentally rebelling against. But you know, and this guy though, he does promote like drinking cow urine and stuff like that, which is also kind of like, I guess it's not as bad as like eating a cow, but I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you think about the drinking cow urine.
I've never even heard it, and it's amazing. I thought I've heard of everything. Why in the hell would somebody do that, and where are they obtaining it from?
I guess this might be something that people do in like Ayurvedic or like Indian traditional medicine kind of thing.
It
But
doesn't sound like medicine to me. It sounds pretty insane.
fair. But yeah, so I was kind of like thinking about just like the idea of compassion and mercy and things like that. And I guess I was just like, I was thinking about, you know, what, I thought a lot about the idea of spirituality, I guess, and to kind of bring it back to what I was talking about initially with like religion, spirituality, and things like that. I was thinking about what it means to truly be spiritual, and I kind of came to the conclusion that it really has to do with how you treat those beings who are unable to thank you or to retaliate against you in any way for anything you may or may not do. And I think that's really kind of where the rubber meets the road. So, and just kind of thinking about that, I was like, okay, definitely need to take this more seriously. And it's funny, but the thing that actually kind of tipped me over the line was I looked up something like veganism or something like that on YouTube, and I saw this video from a vegan activist named John Sackars, and he had a song. It was called "I Can Make Anybody Want to Go Vegan," and he was basically saying, you know, I can make anybody want to go vegan. All I need to do is move my hips like this or something like that. He was just kind of like, it was, I guess, like a humorous kind of video. And it's funny, but that kind of, I was like, wow, I thought that vegans were all like serious and, you know, just had no sense of humor and stuff like that. And I guess like, you know, the footage that I had seen combined with the kind of like spiritual realization, if you will, combined with this humorous side kind of formed this trifecta where I was just like, okay, I can actually like live with myself. I can make these amends and I can say, okay, you know, how do I go forth in a way where this is something that I'm also a part of in a way that helps, you know, other people kind of, and of course, you know, you go through this part. I think you had mentioned this, like with religious people or veterinarians, where you're like, if I just tell people this, then their eyes are gonna just immediately be opened, and they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this. But then, of course, you're hit with the excuses, and then I don't know if you've heard of the term vistopia. There's an author, Claire Mann, who wrote about this idea of vistopia, or basically it's the pain of being, the anguish of being non-vegan or vegan in a non-vegan world. And then, of course, that hits, and then I guess the rest is kind of history or whatever.
Yeah, and speaking of mercy, I'm always amazed that the religious crowd always expects to receive all the mercy in the world when it's time for them to receive it, but they refuse to give it. And I don't know how you can expect to receive something that you refuse to give. It's something so easy, so gentle and kind, to be nice to somebody else, to change your way so somebody else doesn't have to suffer and die.
Well, Gary,
I was going to say, and comedy, by the way, is a great tool. I don't know if people know this, but I always consider myself to be more of a comedian than a philosopher and a preacher. I have George Carlin and Larry David and Mel Brooks flowing through my veins. During Q&A sessions, I would bring up to the crowd, you guys have a bird ass fetish. Everything you eat has to come out of a hen's ass. You guys love eggs, and on Thanksgiving, you shove things into a turkey's ass. You guys engage in bestiality. And I'd have them laughing because there's truth and humor. And George Carlin taught me that. Larry David taught me that you could make a point with humor, and sometimes that was really good, because during my militant portions of the speech, and I was militant, I would push them to the limit. I can see they can't take any more. They're going to break down. They might even leave the room. And then I drop some humor. You guys squeeze cow titties and want to eat things that ooze out of cow's titties, and they'd start laughing. So use comedy if you're funny enough to use it. Any tool to make somebody open their eyes is definitely wonderful.
Gary, I want to touch on what you're saying about kind of people expecting. I guess let me put it this way: like when I believe that selfishness is the idea of expecting something from someone else that you're not willing to do yourself. And I think we do see this a lot with non-vegans, where they're like, "Oh, that's just how he is." I'm sure you've had people in your life just be like, "Oh, well, And this is, I guess, also relevant when it comes to people not eating animals around you, like in your presence. You're like, oh, I mean, I guess this is respectful toward me, but like, I really hate the fact that you do this behind my back in a way as
True.
well. But I think that this idea of selfishness and people expecting you to do things that they are not willing to do themselves can also be seen in the active versus non-active vegan sense, where people expect you're Gary Yourofsky, you're going to be advocating or active or promoting liberation, preaching, teaching, convincing, whatever the term is, for the animals. But I think a lot of people are very comfortable in their kind of bubbles where people don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to alienate people, and I guess there is a bit of a selfishness there, I think, too. And I really respect the fact that you officially kind of considered yourself as retired from activism for some time because you gave that kind of credence to the term, activism.
I hold the term to be sacred. I really do. And even though I've been doing things for the last 10 years, helping Sasha farm, helping caterpillars become butterflies, saving some skunks in my city from some maniac who was drowning them in his backyard, it didn't rise to the level of what I used to do. I was I was on the street corner, in the classroom, and in the jailhouse. So I could no longer in good conscience say, oh, I was an animal rights activist, which is why I said I was retired. I just wasn't doing the things that I used to do. And as much as I do understand people wanting to be comfortable in their little bubble, it's obviously not okay. But every time a student did argue with me, and fortunately I did about 200 lectures every year, only 15 or 20 turned into a Jerry Springer show, which is an amazing ratio considering the topic that I was talking about, trying to teach people to be kind to chickens. But those 15 or 20 built up on me. And when it happened, the first thing that went through my mind was, man, I wish I didn't know. Life was so much easier when I didn't care, when I only cared about myself. Now, of course, I don't mean this. I just want to let you know what went through my head. I'm an open, honest guy. And that was the first thing. God, everybody used to love me before I became vegan. I was the life of the party, and now everybody hates me. Why? What happened to Gary? Gary likes pigs. What? So I used to be the shit when I didn't like pigs, and all of a sudden I like pigs and cows, and Gary's a dick? I don't even understand it, but life is easy not knowing and not caring. Of course, I would never go back to not knowing and being oblivious to the tumult of the animal kingdom, to the plight of our planetary companions, to our animal brothers and sisters. But people got to strengthen up, man. You got to toughen up.
Well, nobody likes being a hostage negotiator, and that's essentially what we are, right? These animals are powerless, they're confined, and there's a large group of people who make excuses to keep them in that situation. And we're basically, it's like that interview you did with, I believe maybe that was in Israel, where the interviewer was like, I want you now have 2 minutes or whatever to convince me to eat animals, let's say once a month or something like that. It's like, this is literally,
it's outrageous, like, isn't it? An outrageous question. Could you
Mm-hmm.
imagine saying, you have 2 minutes now to convince me not to rape this child? Like, wait, why would I have to convince you to do that? Really? You don't know that that's just wrong? You shouldn't do that? It was an outrageous question, although I think I answered it pretty well. It's funny, I did so much stuff over the years, I really don't remember most of the things I said and did. It's a lot of people think, oh, Gary's an arrogant, narcissistic bastard. Do you know, Gary does not sit around and watch his old speeches and stuff. When I decided to come out of retirement recently and come down here to Germany, I put on my Georgia Tech speech. I swear I didn't know 99% of it. I was sitting there going, oh my God, oh, wow, that was some tight stuff. I said that, oh yeah, okay. And I yelled out to my ex-wife, Erica. We actually broke up last August, still great friends. She's a wonderful person. But I yelled out to her, I said, Erica, do you remember that I said this? She's like, yeah, Gary, I remember. Everybody remembers but you. So I don't even remember why I just brought this up, but there was a reason for me bringing this up. Oh, I don't sit around and watch all my stuff, but just strengthen up, speak out, get some good stuff going, and you'd be amazed at how many people that you can actually reach and convert and teach. This is what it's all about.
And Gary, I think, you know, to kind of, I don't know if piggyback, I guess that's maybe a vegan term, off what you just said. I've had, you know, kind of arguments with people in the past where people have kind of asked me, like, wouldn't you rather have, let's say, 10 people reduce their animal consumption versus like one person go fully vegan, which I hate that term. But I've kind of remained steadfast on the idea that no, we need people who are vegan and unapologetic and not going to perpetuate this system, because life is ultimately it's very short, right? We have however much of a window of time we have to make this impact that we can make. And if we have people who are just going along with what's happening, albeit to a lesser degree, I don't think that having multiple people who are doing that is going to have potentially as profound of a culture changing effect as people who are actually vocally strong and ideologically committed.
I like your answer, my man. I'll be fair though. There are times I sit there and think I would take some form of reduction, but it would have to be something like somehow a law was passed where Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are all vegan days. No restaurant can serve anything but vegan food. That would put a reduction in the number of animals being raped, enslaved, and mass produced and killed and murdered. I'd have to go along with it. I obviously wouldn't condemn that. That's not what I want, and it's not the solution. But if it leads to the path of a solution, I could get down with that. But you know, when people bring up that I don't eat a lot of meat, I don't believe them. To me, it's like, oh, last Tuesday I had a salad. And by the way, the salad had ranch dressing on it anyways and cheese and a little bit. Like, it wasn't even a real vegan meal. So I don't believe people when they say it. So it would have to be something etched in stone like that. Again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's no meat.
It's like the thing with the hunters who are like, I only eat the meat I kill. And you don't kill meat, obviously, you kill animals. But
right.
like, you know, it makes me think of something like Cheez-Its. Like, do they not eat Cheez-Its, for example? Like, do they look at the box and they're like, oh, this has an animal product in it, so I'm not gonna eat it.
Or you're telling me they never eat out. Like, I once debated Ted Nugent. I think I actually twice debated Ted Nugent. He said, Gary, the Nugent family hasn't eaten domesticated animals since 1969. Well, I find this nearly impossible. Are you telling me all those road dates when you were on the road playing your guitar, jamming out in all cities, you never ate out at a restaurant? Because the restaurants aren't hunting and killing animals. So yeah, it's hard to believe somebody when they say that's the only meat that I eat. Although I challenged a bunch of hunters over the years that told me after a lecture came up after Q&A ended and said, I just eat that. So I said, you're vegan on the outside world. They said, well, I said, well then, in order for this to be true, because I would want to get something from anybody, you'd have to be vegan on the outside world. And they say, you know what? Deal. And I'd shake, I'm like, deal. So at least it was something. But again, I don't believe people when they say that that's all they do. Bullshit. There's no way you're living in a fucking cabin in the woods and only eating that deer year round that you've killed. But even if it was, it's still not justified. You still murdered an innocent being. You still took a mother or a father away from their child. You still took somebody else's life because you thought you were more special. More important, you were arrogant in your belief system that animal was put here for you. That's not why deer and pheasants and all the other murdered animals by hunters were put on this earth. They still need to change their ways.
Yeah, and you know, you see these videos of like baby deer, for example, being found by people, and you know, they're all like, oh my gosh, they're so cute, and I bet their mother was hunted or something, but then the hypocrisy just follows.
Here, I'll even give you a story. Sasha Farm, I was there way back in the day. And this, like deep down, I think you might have said this when the podcast started, or maybe it was yesterday, but deep down, I think everybody knows this is wrong, except we just, come up with lies and excuses. There was a hunter that showed up with a baby boar, and he shows up and he says, I shot his mother. I didn't realize there was a baby nearby, and I found him. Can you guys take care of him? And I'm there like, with my hand, like, are you kidding me? So it doesn't bother you that you shot the mother, but it bothered you that the mother had a baby, and now the baby has no mother, and now you feel upset and you want us to help out. I mean, what the fuck is going on in people's minds? Why would you shoot a boar? Why would you shoot somebody at all? Again, this is and these kids, these hunting kids, are indoctrinated by their dads or their granddads. And I was challenged by Nugent, I think, during this debate where he said, well, my father taught me how to do this. I said, you know what? My father didn't teach me how to kill, and I'm thankful for that. He didn't tell me about the meat, dairy, and egg industry, unfortunately, but he didn't want to have fun with me by going out in the woods with a bow and an arrow and a gun and shooting somebody. Took me to a baseball game. Took me to Cedar Point Amusement Park. We went out and actually had fun where no one else had to suffer and die in such a horrible, dramatic fashion. Like, hey, let's go kill a deer and chop his head off and put it on the wall and celebrate. It's sick, psychotic behavior from everybody. Listen, if you're not vegan, you're living a sick, psychotic life in one way or another.
You can have a fun day, in a forest, without purpose.
How about looking for deer? How excited are you? And I'm the same. If I'm driving down the road and there's a deer, like, oh my God, look, there's a deer. It just brings me so much joy to see.
Take a camera, take a picture.
Yeah, pictures. It brings me joy to see all the creatures. My backyard back in Michigan is just a little wildlife sanctuary. I have 2 bird baths, and I change those bird baths sometimes 7-8 times a day because I want them to have fresh water. And they're tweeting in the trees as if they're saying, oh, the guy's coming out to change the water again. And by the time I'm back in the house, which is 15 seconds, I look out the window, there's 25 birds. And I'm like, oh my God, look at the oriole. The oriole's here. Oh, the woodpecker's here today. Oh my God, the robin's here today, and the cardinals are here, and the blue jays. Or there's a groundhog that lives next door to me, and he comes back in my compost area. And I always tell him, you good idiot, that's for you. Please come here. And the squirrels are playing, and it brings me so much joy and pleasure. I don't get why other people don't feel the same way.
You got to share some pictures. I don't know if you have a camera with a zoom lens, but I'd love to see that.
Can I show it right now? You mean on the show?
I
send it to you later on? I'll send you some. I have something. I have a few cool things. So, I've been protecting caterpillars. I must have released 500 butterflies over the last 6-7 years. I have a video of a butterfly coming out of her cocoon. You want to talk about fascinating. And wow, they start off as this little worm. And then I feed them fennel and dill and milkweed if they're a swallowtail. I'm not fennel, dill, and parsley if they're a swallowtail. Milkweed if they're a monarch. And then they eat so much and get really big, like really big worms. And then they climb up to the top of the little enclosure that I have, and they make a cocoon, and they spin this silk web around themselves, whatever it is. And then they come out a few months later. It's like, you got to be kidding. And humans think we're cool. Look what this creature just did. I have, and one time there were 6 monarchs that hatched in one day. And the last one, I couldn't get out of the little enclosure, and I finally got him out. He lands on a flower nearby, and I'm talking to him. I always baby talk all the critters. And then she flies and lands on my forearm. Never happened. And wouldn't come off. You can see in the video, she's actually gripping the hair on my forearms. And I'm talking to her like, I'm your daddy. I love you very much. Come back and visit me. And then after a couple minutes, I'm like, this is crazy. You chose my forearm over the zinnias, and I'm pointing her. I'm trying to put her on the zinnia, and she won't get off. And it was just, it's how magical is it to actually get a wild animal to get that close to you? Talk about something magical.
Trust, yeah.
Wow. I mean, it was like, it's still the most, look at me tell, it's the most amazing thing I think that might have happened to me with a wild animal. A butterfly decided to land on me. So fortunate. How lucky am I? So I'm fascinated with animals. I don't understand how most people aren't, or if they are, you'll notice they're only fascinated with the animals that they don't harm and kill. It's easy to love. penguins and whales if you live in America. And there's a sloths. It's easy to love creatures you don't violate, you don't eat, you don't wear, you don't experiment on. But it takes a real human being, it takes real character and real morality to extend compassion to those that you are actually violating and change your lifestyle, which is what veganism is based on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, I know that we kind of have overkept you here. We're approaching the 100-minute mark. Could I ask you one last question?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm wondering if you knew as a fact, like zero doubt, that one day we will have a vegan world in the future, probably after you and I are long gone. What would you do differently, if anything, today? Or how would you feel differently? Would you feel differently toward humans in general? Or I guess...
That's a pretty good question, my man. Yeah, I would, because the basis of my enmity towards humans is how we view other creatures and how we are hypocrites and we demand life, liberty, and happiness and refuse to give it to the animals. Yeah, I would change my ways. Absolutely. And understand the reason I feel the reason I hate, I'll say I hate humans so much with a passion, collectively. Individually, I'm fine with humans. I'm talking about our species. We're the infestation of all infestations. We're the scourge of all scourges. Humans made me feel this way. I didn't grow up this way. When I started my veganism, I was still talking about racism, sexism, heterosexism. During several speeches, I would actually stop and talk about the Darfur and the genocide in Darfur when it was going on. I would explain injustices that were going on and make comparisons. And then year after year, after year of less people converting, of more animals being killed, no matter how much vegan food is on the market these days, more animals are being killed. Humans turned me off to other human beings. Humans made me feel the way I feel for being so selfish and egotistical and arrogant. And in good conscience, I can no longer stand up for human beings. And all I'm doing now, I want to be clear, the human rights people say humans first, animals last. I've just flipped it. Animals first, humans last. Human rights people say humans are more important than animals. I flipped it. No, animals are more important than humans in my eyes. These are the real victims on this planet. And that's my position. I understand human injustice. I just will not fight for somebody else who's going to violate somebody else. Not going to do it anymore. To me, it's an abusive relationship that vegans have with the human rights movement. They take advantage of us. They expect us to support them at every turn. And what do? No, they still eat meat. They eat cheese, milk, and eggs. They laugh about vivisection. They okay hunting. They excuse hunting. They go to the circus, the rodeo, and the zoo. This is outrageous behavior from people who are claiming to know right from wrong, and I won't support it anymore. And for anybody who still has a tough time understanding where I'm coming from, come see me in 29 years after you've been vegan, after you've seen the things that I've seen and talked to them, the amount of people I've talked to. You might feel the way I feel, and you don't have to agree with the way I feel. You ask me a question, people have asked me a question, how I feel. This is how I feel. I'm allowed to feel how I'm supposed to feel. Don't make me say things I don't want to say and feel things I don't want to feel about our species anymore. Not going to do it. I'm not going to play along. Again, do you know that the number one comment I got from professors over the years, why they loved having me in their classes? We never met somebody so open and willing to talk about how they feel and not be a politician. My truth, even though it was harsh, and even though many people didn't agree, it was appreciated by the students and the professors in those classrooms. And I wish people who didn't care for me, who want to silence me and cancel me, would understand that I'm not a politician. I know it's tough to listen to somebody that's so outspoken, be so truthful, but why do you want to hear a politician? You want me to lie and say certain things that I don't feel? Would that make you feel better? It wouldn't make me feel better. And then if you found out I really didn't believe that, wouldn't you hate me even more? At least you know where I stand. And one more thing, 1992, you could look it up on YouTube, punch my name in and punch up the words Declaration of Misrepresentation. Yeah, I used to want to be a rapper before I became a vegan activist. I was 22 years old. I wrote a rap called, It was an anti-racist rap. So I was preaching about human rights before most of the people who are preaching to silence me were even born. Spare me trying to teach me about humans needing justice. I know they do. But again, I'm not going to give it to humans anymore until they give it to the animals. Animals first, humans last. And that's my position, and I stand strong by that position.
I think there's something respectable about someone who knows where they stand and makes it clear. I think I've thought a lot of times that I prefer the company of trees because at least I know where they stand, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think like I said originally, I don't agree with every position that you hold, and I'm sure vice versa as well. And it's still great that we were able to have this conversation. And
by the way, let me just point this out there. I know what people are talking about. Let me say this. Jews and Muslims are acting like petulant children, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of taking sides, by the way. It's bullshit. No peace accord is going to make it better. Nobody screaming and protesting is going to make it better. I want to know who's going to cross that border with their hands out and their arms open, shake on it, hug it out, and say, I'm sorry. Can we start over? When is this going to end? It's been going on for thousands of years. They're petulant children. Everybody, all this human conflict, we're acting like petulant children. Stop it already. If you want peace and justice, you can make it happen. But no amount of screaming and protesting is going to change what's going on in the Middle East. And by the way, the land they're fighting over, it belonged to the animals first. This also bothers me. I hear this all, oh, this is our land, this is my land, this is Native American land, this is white European land. Bullshit. All this land belonged to the animals at one time, and we stole it from them. They're the original victims, which is why I speak so firmly on their behalf. They're the ones that have been violated the most, not human beings. Add up all the human beings who've been oppressed and murdered and raped over the years. It wouldn't add up to the amount of animals oppressed, raped, exploited, and murdered in 1 month. In 1 month, and I might be generous, it might be half a month, but 1 month on this planet, more innocent beings will suffer and die than all human beings. This is why I speak on their behalf. And please don't make me, I didn't sign up to be a human rights activist anyways. It's not what I signed up for. I made a commitment to some animals, to that elephant in the circus, to the octopus, when the Red Wings were throwing their dead bodies on the ice 50 to 100 a night in 1995. I made promises to animals that I would help them and give my life for them and be their spokesperson. And I don't know why people just can't accept that. Even if you disagree, again, you just, fine. We can disagree. I have friends on both sides of the issue with Israel and Palestine, and we're still friends. We're not hurling insults at people. You're a racist. You're a Nazi. Stop it. And there's many issues, by the way, I'm sure we don't agree upon. Pro-choice, anti-choice, pro-gun, anti-gun, capital punishment thing. There's a lot of issues on this planet. Don't tell me we're in full agreement on every issue that's out there. Thanks for letting me say that, by the way, and get that off my chest.
Gary, thank you for being here, and thank you for being so forthcoming with your views, and in being honest. Yesterday, I talked to somebody on the street who he said, I need to do better, but I'm just not there yet. And I was very clear with him that I respect that, and I told him it's not just lip service. I respect that so much more than all the other things that I hear, all the other excuses, all the other disingenuous crap that, I never even thought of saying when I was a non-vegan confronted with the issue of veganism. So, it's also been said that honesty is the highest form of intimacy. And I do respect when a person.
I agree with that too, by the way. I would have done the same thing. At least, like, I get upset, and I'm sure you do too, when they lie. Stop lying. Stop saying God says it's okay. I can't get protein anywhere else. Oh, animals don't feel pain. Animals aren't aware. Now we're going to have a fight. If you just looked at me and said, man, I need to do better, or I don't give a shit. I'm like, oh, okay. I used to tell crowds that were getting mad at me, why don't you just tell me you don't give a shit and I'll leave? And then they say, well, we don't give a shit. I said, well, then why did you tell me God says it was okay? Why did you lie for the last 25 minutes during the Q&A? All you had to say was, Gary, I don't care. I can't make you care. I wish I knew a magical way to make you care. I know how to inform you. I know how to influence you and you know, try to persuade you. But in the end, if you don't care, I got nothing
Yeah.
to say,
I mean,
man. I don't know.
that's like the black pill against veganism, right? It's apathy, apathy
Yeah.
and indifference.
At
Yeah.
least be honest. At least be honest about not caring. Don't make excuses because you rile me up. Or don't walk around claiming humans were created in the image of God. The way I see it, looks like the image of the devil to me. You're not godly beings. How dare you say this? The things that you do. So those are the things that rile me up and then make me wanna be militant and preach.
All right. Well, Gary, thank you for being so generous with your time. I know we're approaching the 2 hour mark right now, so I
Okay.
don't want to keep you longer, but hope you have an awesome, looks like it's still daytime out there in Germany.
It is. It's only about 4 o'clock if it's only 2 hours. In fact, I'm going to head out to the Cube of Truth in front of the cathedral in Cologne in about an hour and hang out there and try to preach and teach on the streets. By the way, being on the streets has been really rough for me. I haven't been on the streets since 2000. This is how ancient I am. I took my street protest to the classroom. And what's funny is AV took my classroom lectures to the streets. They condensed my 70-minute speech. And it's all based on everything that I was saying, accountability, and do animals deserve respect, and put yourself in the victim's position. So, but I'm really out of place, and I'm not embarrassed to admit it. I've told them, you guys are experts. This is not my bailiwick. I'm a classroom guy. I'm a media interview guy nowadays. But there's some great activists out here in Germany, and it's fabulous to see them converting people on the streets. It's tough to do that. It really is tough.
Well, hopefully we gave some insights to some people watching, and I had talked about being open to Q&A and stuff like that. I guess nobody, as far as I know, asked any questions. So I'll just thank you again for your time,
Okay.
and yeah.
Quick shout outs real quick. Again, Sasha Farm, Shara Jones, Age of Asparagus, Chavi, the great Spanish activist, who, by the way, just gave me a tattoo yesterday of an elephant. Wow. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
Connected to, let me see, an octopus. Those are the two animals that opened my eyes. And Carmen, the great Spanish activist, who's trying to end horse carriage injustice. I can't believe in this day and age it's out in the open like this.
It got banned in Chicago, actually, a few years
really
ago.
Well, that's maybe we can get it banned over in Spain where she's at too, because it's going on from 8 in the morning to 12:30 at night, and it's just driving her crazy. And she's confronting these people too, which is some tough activism. You want to talk about tough? Confronting the animal abusers. So much love to Carmen out there for doing that stuff, and all the animals from Sasha Farm and all the enslaved animals. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. We're all trying to help and awaken our species somehow.
Yeah, and please, with the mention of Sasha Farm, please do consider making a donation to them. I don't have super chat capabilities with the size of my channel, but please try to help them any way we can. And I actually didn't realize that it's not that far from Chicago. I think it's less than 4 hours.
Yeah, you're close, man. You can drive up there. In fact, there's a big event. I think August 17th, something's going on. I'm on the road. I'm not remembering and following the emails, but they just set something out. You should head up there, man. It's really a beautiful place.
I definitely plan to go at some point. So yeah, thanks for bringing that to my attention. It sounds like an amazing place, like a huge. Sounds like they have so many animals there. Just be immersed.
There's usually about 200 animals there, give or take a couple dozen. It's always a paradise. And if there's an event going on, they'll have vegan food trucks there, of course. So you'll be able to eat some stuff and play with the animals. And keep in mind, the animals, they get to come. If we get to play with them, it's on their terms. I know you understand that. Just want everyone to know. Don't make an animal come up to you if they don't want to. But you'll be surprised how many want to come up and say hi, especially if you got an apple or a carrot. So bring some treats for them, and I'm sure all the animals will come up.
Maybe a watermelon too. I know pigs love when you just smash a watermelon.
Oh man, the cow. You know what the cows love pumpkins.
Oh, wow.
It was weird. We didn't know this. There was a local pumpkin farmer after Halloween years ago. He drives up with a truck full of pumpkins. He goes, man, I got these extra ones. You want them? We started throwing them in the field. The cows went nuts. In fact, they went so nuts, I jumped the fence. I said, wait a second. Raw pumpkin is this good? And I picked one of the pieces up and I ate it. Next to him, I said, this is terrible, guys. This is horrid. Are you kidding me? You guys are going, and they couldn't get enough of these. In fact, they almost broke down the fence trying to get to the pumpkin truck, which is why we had to start throwing them in. They were halfway over the fence. We're like, wait, okay, we're still throwing them in. They love pumpkin. It's funny to figure out which vegetables and fruits that they end up really digging. So yeah,
I
cows and
gotta try
pumpkins.
that with a cow. Definitely
Yeah,
gotta try that.
you bring a pumpkin, I'm sure he's probably gonna go nuts. You just gotta break it on the ground for him, break it open.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, thanks again so much for your time. And I'll go ahead and end the stream now. But yeah, thank you for everybody for being here. Again, please consider donating to Sasha Farm to help animals, who are under their care there. And thank you for being here. And hope everybody has a great vegan day. All right, bye for
Thank
now.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And I'll go ahead and put our little outro here. And yeah, thanks again, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate your time, Gary, and all the activists, vegans, even non-vegans who are here. Hopefully some people maybe learned something. And again, please consider donating to Sasha Farm. All right, bye for now.